Today I'm doing a naval fleet composition video. If you don't know what that means, it's essentially a fleet template video, which is going to show you guys a bunch of fleets you can copy and paste and do in your own games, or change it however you would like and redistribute it. I don't really mind. But we're not just going to be covering the fleet templates themselves. We're also going to be covering some pretty cool strategies you can do with these fleets. One, for example, is going to be using this 41 ships right here and actually being able, and you're hearing me right on this, do what I did in a game and use it in a way to where you're able to sink over 400 enemy ships with probably losing only 30 of these, and they were actually undermatched. It's crazy. So anyway, the first one we're going to go over is right here, Sub Hunter and Coastal Patrol. I'm pretty sure everyone understands what Sub Hunter is. It's a 1 light cruiser, 3 destroyers. Now here's why it's also Coastal Patrol. And it's not exactly the Coastal Patrol you think. It's not just guarding this, okay? A lot of people don't understand. They can invade Japan from California by doing this. They can use these and they can get naval superiority in these regions, so you're able to, well, invade Japan. Or if you have to, God help you if you do, but if you have to invade the United Kingdom, it's the same thing. You can just put these in the line a little bit and then put your main navy up in the front lines where you know there's going to be combat. That's what that's for. This one right here is going to be the Air Killer. Now this is one you want to stack over and over and over again, depending on how large of an air force you're talking about here. Now one game, for example, I dealt with someone playing as Spain. That person's probably watching this video right now, where they were playing as Spain and got kamikaze aircraft. I could not stop them until I got this, and then I actually shot down a lot of their planes. The way this one works is that if you have light cruisers, the AA on them is so powerful compared to the other ships, it's absolutely insane. It will shoot down probably 4 to 5 planes for every ship you're going to lose, at least. And that's why you would like to have maybe up to 20 light cruisers and 40 destroyers. As long as you keep it in the same mindset of, for every 2 destroyers, build 1 light cruiser and keep building up like that. For every light cruiser, you must have 2 destroyers protecting that light cruiser. And this is an anti-aircraft fleet. And you just keep on adding over and over and over and over again until it's up big enough to where you're pretty confident that you'll be able to fight off kamikazes. I promise, it's very good. Now let's get into the big fleets themselves. For the first one here, it's a light carrier task force. It's not a terrier, it's not a dog. The way this one works, I can't speak today, I'm tired. The way this one works is it's a light carrier task force meant for defending small areas that you don't think are going to get invaded, but you're not entirely sure. Something, for example, would be if you're in a multiplayer match and Brazil is going fascist and he's not sure if he's going to join the Allies and he's starting to work on a little bit of a navy, put this around here. If you're only at war with Japan in the Pacific for some reason and not at war with Hitler over there in Germany, put this over here and somewhere you're not going to have to worry about too much, but you're kind of thinking he might do something like Coral Sea, yeah, these places, something like that. Another thing this one's good for too is a distraction fleet. This works great in multiplayer. If somebody actually goes and uses, say for example, a stacked fleet. If you don't know what a stacked fleet is, this is everything I had left over when I was doing this. This would be something nuts. This would not even be able to be done in multiplayer. This would be a stacked fleet. It's where they combine every ship they have into one large battle group in the hopes it will decimate whatever naval ships you have. Now, people don't realize, for that to work, the other person has to be stacking their ships as well. This is where this comes in. The type of composition you have is going to be this right here, because it's going to be a small aircraft carrier fleet. Its main idea is you have advanced battleships, and the battleships can take care of their own and sink ships, and these will act as air cover. And these are just the extra carriers you have laying around just looking for something to do. That's what this is for. It's kind of your reserve fleet. And if you use this, it will be able to damage the enemy fleet enough, even if it damages only like 10 ships out of like 180. What will happen is it's going to send it to port and make it repair. That's when you use one of these kind of fleets here. Here's one, for example, or any aircraft carrier fleet. and then go to your air wings and use the air wings to do port strike. And this is overpowered because the only way to stop it is if they have heavy fighters and a lot of regular fighters, and they have them on air superiority and intercept. Otherwise, they get no penalties and they go nuts. One game I sunk 400 Japanese ships as the USA and only lost like 32 destroyers, I think. And it was out of this exact fleet that I lost it was 32 ships out of here, I remember. I can't remember what they were, but I lost 32 ships. I didn't lose the carrier, and I don't remember what else it was. I didn't lose the carriers though, and everything else was fine. But because they had stacked their fleet, they had to go repair. I sent this exact fleet in, or something very close to it, because I'm gonna tell you guys in a second something else. This is nuts when you use this in that manner, because this will cripple their entire navy. You really only need these two fleets right here, this one and this one, if you're going to do anything in multiplayer. So next thing, we're going to be covering something else here really quick before we go any further. I should have mentioned a minute ago. I'm going to be doing a thing where you can make the fleet your own, but stay within these parameters. What I mean by this is this light carrier task force, you can have as little, because it still does the same job, as 1 aircraft carrier to 3 aircraft carriers, because it's a light carrier task force. As for your cruisers on here, on this one, you can go 4 to 12 cruisers, light cruisers I mean. As for battleships, you can go 2 to 4. I recommend having level 4s if you can, or super heavies as the 2 battleships and just have them as 2. But you can have 2 to 4, 5 to 8 heavy cruisers, it's up to you, and you must have 24 destroyers. The reason the number on destroyers is fixed like this, and I recommend don't go over or under 24. 99% of battles I've seen, destroyers are almost wiped out. If the other person has the same level of destroyers, they will probably wipe out almost all your destroyers right off the bat, just because destroyers are the first thing to be engaged in war or in naval combat on this game. So keep those parameters in your mind. 1 to 3 carriers, 4 to 12 light cruisers, 2 to 4 battleships, 5 to 8 heavy cruisers, 24 destroyers. Or just copy the templates themselves. As for our carrier task force, I recommend having no more or less than 4 aircraft carriers, 10 to 16 light cruisers, 4 to 6 battleships, 1 to 4 battle cruisers, 6 heavy cruisers, and 30 to 45 destroyers. Now let's get to our little fire support fleet over here. This is actually a fixed number. This is supposed to be 6 cruisers. I just didn't have enough extra to build in this. But this fleet right here, it's fire support. Its main goal is to literally just do shore bombardment. That's all this is for. Nothing else matters with it. It is just for shore bombardment. It's 4 battleships, 4 heavy cruisers, 6 light cruisers, and 18 destroyers. So it can pretty much guard anything and fight off anything. Next, we have our large carrier task force. As you can tell, yes, there are 8 aircraft carriers in here. There is a very good reason behind having 8 aircraft carriers, and it's kind of stupid how all these people always say, don't go over 4, don't go over 4, the penalty's not worth it, it's not worth it. Trust me, it is, okay? Once you go over that 4 limit, once you hit anything above 8 aircraft carriers in one strike group, it is worth it, because the penalty is only 20% to the all of the planes in the battle, all the planes in the naval battle. All that'll happen is no matter what, after you go past 4, it's stuck. It's 20% of the planes in the entire battle cannot engage anything. It's just 20% can't do anything. So if you have 100 planes on a carrier, and or let's say you have 10 carriers and each one has 100 planes on it, well, I mean, so what? You lost 200, but you have 800 planes in this naval battle. And if you can support that, like if you're the United States, or somehow you're Japan, or maybe even the UK can get away with it, possibly. I highly doubt it, but if you can support that many planes for a naval battle, this is the fleet you want to do right here, this composition right here. This is what you want to do, because there is nothing that can fight this off. If you have that kind of production power, there's nothing anyone can do to stop you. So with this fleet, what you want to do is, for this large carrier task force, 8 carriers. It's either 4 or 8. Make up your mind. It's 4 or 8 for this one. 1 to 3 battleships, 16 to 32 light cruisers, 1 to 4 battle cruisers, 2 to 3 heavy cruisers, 30 to 60 destroyers. Now, something else I want to mention here, a couple really quick things. With aircraft, or not aircraft alone, I'm sorry, but with the cruisers, one rule of thumb I like to stick to thinking about, if you have aircraft carriers in a strike force, you don't need as many light cruisers, because light cruisers are there for anti-aircraft. Your aircraft carriers should be working on the anti-aircraft themselves with fighters. So if you have fighters on your carriers and you're going to be using fighters, you don't need to produce as many light cruisers for battle groups, because you're not going to need them as bad. Now, if you're not going to work on carriers that much, then you need light cruisers, like in this fleet right here. This is, yeah, as you can see, this has only 2 more light cruisers, but that's just because of the simple fact that there's so many aircraft carriers on here, and I have so many of them loaded with torpedo bombers mostly. Down here, this is a different thing I'm going to go over in a second. That's just the way it works, and we'll cover this fleet over here in a second. The next thing I want to mention too, not a lot of people realize, there's one of 2 ways you want to build your aircraft carrier's air wing. Yeah, your air wing. It's one of 2 things. You either are going to build it in a way to be offensive or defensive. The idea and the thought process behind this, I have it split 50-50 because I'm not sure what I was going to do. What you want to do is, if you're going to be going into battle against somebody with, say for example, super heavy 2s and you have battleship 2s or 3s, you're going to want to use a lot of cruisers for light cruisers for anti-aircraft, and on your carriers have a lot of torpedo bombers in a certain way. For every, if you're going to be using these carriers to attack somebody's navy, you want them with, for every 2 or 3 torpedo bombers, have 1 carrier fighter. And vice versa, if you're going to be defensive and worry that someone else has been building a lot of carriers too, but you have better battleships, say for example, or better carriers, then you want to build a difference of, like, for every torpedo bomber, 2 to 3 fighters. So kind of exactly what I've done here with 80 on here is the exact same thing. Like, this would right here be something like, you know, the other guy has a lot of aircraft carriers and he probably is working on heavy fighters for him. And down here, this would be something like, the guy hasn't worked on carriers that much. You've got a leg up on the aircraft production scale, and you want to take out his battleship. That's the difference with those. Not a lot of people realize that there's 2 ways of doing that. Now, the last 2 things, this one right here, it's going to be the next fleet composition. It's going to be 10 battleships, 4 heavy cruisers, 28 light cruisers, 45 destroyers. Now, what you can do with this one is 6 to 10 battleships, 20 to 35 light cruisers, 2 to 4 heavy cruisers, and 30 to 45 destroyers. Now, this one right here can be used the same way as I told you this light fleet, except this would best be suited for if you have multiple super heavy battleships, or maybe just multiple battleships that outmatch them, and you just want to send them running and just have them patrolling off the coast of Japan or something, and just send them back. Like, literally, the perfect example would be just, you know, patrolling over here. If they happen to find contact and they actually sink something, well, if you can see where they actually send their navy, just send your planes like that. I mean, just send your aircraft carrier strike group by itself, just like that, and then click on your planes and just tell them to click on an area and do port strike, just like that, and I guarantee you, you're not going to have any issues whatsoever, and their entire navy is going to be gone, and they're going to be angry at you and do what they did to me one game, because they didn't know I was actually using a strat. They thought I was hacking, and they actually, no joke, banned me from the Discord and kicked me from the games. They thought that's how overpowered this was. They thought I was hacking, because I took out over 400 Japanese ships and lost 32 US ships out of this group, and didn't lose anything out of this. So that's pretty much it. Oh, one last thing. For battle groups, like something that has battleships in it or aircraft carriers, do this. do medium repair priority. Not a lot of people realize that the difference between having high and medium means that as soon as your battleships get like under 90%, they run away. You're going to lose way more screen ships by doing this, repair priority medium, but your battleships will stay in longer. So you're going to take out more enemy planes, more enemy ships, more enemy submarines, but you're going to lose a lot as well. But your battleships are going to stay in the fight longer. This would work perfect for this little fleet right here. This guy with 10 battleships, or maybe even this little aircraft carrier group if these are super heavy battleships, because it's got so few, and they would all stay in the fight much longer. And actually, once they get under, I think 50% health is when they determine they need to go and actually leave the battle. So all your screens will probably die, but so will all theirs, and your battleships will stay and do more damage, and your aircraft will do more damage too. And one final piece of information here: not a lot of people realize how to use submarines. There's two ways to do this. You can either split them up in tiny fleets and just keep splitting them like this, to where you have multiple fleets of 4, and you just select them all, and then you just, you just send them all out somewhere. You just send all of the destroyer or the submarines on convoy raiding somewhere. Or another thing you do is get advanced submarines and put torpedoes in, and put them with something like 8 cruisers, 4 destroyers, and 40 submarines. Now, if you go up against a big navy, this is not going to work. But if you go up against something that's mostly consisting of heavy ships like battleships and aircraft carriers, the battleships are actually going to try to engage your destroyers, and then your submarines can come in and wipe out the carriers and the battleships, because it lures them forward or whatever, and they can't get away by the time the submarines make it. And by the time they kill the destroyers and the cruisers, they're already too close, and they'll at least get some good hits in. So guys, that is the entire fleet compensation, or whatever. It's the entire fleet template video. Guys, this is all of the fleets I've discovered over, I don't know, like the last 2 years of playing Hearts of Iron. What's worked for me pretty good. But remember, stacking fleets is one of the worst things you can actually do in this game, unless you're putting like 40 aircraft carriers in it. Otherwise, it's a horrible decision, just because if they damage you once and you have to go and repair your ships, more than likely someone's going to do port strikes, just like I said to do. Anyway guys, thank you again so much for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed this video. If you did, please don't forget to leave a like down below and subscribe for weekly uploads. Thanks for watching. I'll see you guys next time. Stay awesome.